A lot of the times I talk to my clients about shadow work and how important it is to check in with yourself and how you're doing, to really dig in on the triggers that are happening with you currently. And for some reason, I feel like this next Mercury retrograde is going to be a gnarly one. I think, it's Leo season as well, so everyone's being their biggest, most authentic slash obnoxious self and just being out there, which is fabulous in its own way. But I also think that it's bringing a lot of things to light. Leo is all about sun energy, but also the retrograde, happening during that period, because I believe the retrograde starts the 4th of August, ends on the 28th. We're a bit in the shadow period of it right now, the pre-shadow. But it's going to bring a lot of things to light that you can't ignore about yourself. And a part of that leans into the theme of authenticity, right? And just to be vulnerable for a moment, for me, something's been teasing up this entire week for me. I'm 43. I talk about it all the time. But I am in this perimenopausal state. Through my 20s, I had cancer. I had skin cancer a lot and I had chemo radiation. And I knew that it was going to mess with my system eventually. However, that said, in the past 20 years, the only thing I've really had to worry about with my feminine health has been how to not get pregnant, STD health and all that stuff. And then of course, when I was married, I just wasn't interested in having children, at that time. And so it's something that I never gave thought to. But just recently, and it kind of started about 2 years ago when I started traveling, I started noticing some things changing in me when I was traveling with my mom overseas in Germany, and then the next month with my mom's best friend and a dear friend of mine, Mary Ellen, when we were in Scotland. I started noticing shifts around me and how I am in my body. This past week, I believe that I may have gotten one of my last periods, who knows? But it's something that is bubbling up a lot of things in me, and it's a bigger picture thing. It's not even about myself and where I am. It's more of, and I didn't even realize it until I was like talking to a client the other day. It's more of a rage that is bubbling up because I'm starting to realize that I don't know a lot of people who are going through what I'm going through. I don't have a lot of family history with it, so there's not a lot of like knowledge I have to, have expectations around. I've also had cancer through most of my 20s, and so any of the chemotherapy treatments or anything like that, I feel like would have shifted my my biology, or just how I operate. It would have shifted anything there as well and changed it, hopefully not, but maybe it did. But also I'm noticing that we have a medical system that isn't really built around or for or by women in this current stage. I was thinking the other day about how I lived in Los Angeles for, I don't know, it was like maybe 12 or 13 years, and I loved it. But the one thing I didn't love about it was watching and meeting and working with some of the most beautiful women I've ever seen, who would literally happily, like literally flip their bodies inside out to have new skin so that they could look as young as their predecessors, right? Or not predecessors, as young as like their colleagues who were like coming into the industry in their 20s. And I remember thinking, I'm like, who's telling them that they look bad, right? It's like, I remember one of my first times I was working in Hollywood, I saw Meryl Streep and I was like, gaga. But I remember watching her handle herself. And at that time, I want to say maybe she was I don't know how she is, maybe in her 60s, but she was just so fierce and so beautiful. I remember seeing Julianne Moore. I think Bette Midler I saw at one point too, but she was like this little like tight pocket-sized person. But I remember seeing all these women, and I remember some of them, I met Dolly Parton, and I remember just seeing like her, and I'm like, I was checking behind her to see if there were like paper clips holding her together, behind, because she was just so tight, right? But she's an entertainer. But I really think about, and myself included, the obsession around what we should be as we get older and as we age. And I'll be the first to admit that I haven't had real work done on my face since I've lived in Los Angeles, truly. I used to get fillers and I used to get lasers. Lasers kept my skin turning over the skin cells, so I had less skin cancers. So there was more of like that motivation behind it. But as I was doing it, my collagen was popping, right? And I finally gotten to the point where I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, wow, look at her. She's amazing, you know, for the most part. I still have my days of like, what the fuck, too. But lately I've been having a lot of rage around my womb space. And it wasn't until the other day that I was walking around with a client, I was doing a home visit, and we were walking around her property and she was talking about where she's at in her life. I feel like she's a few years ahead of me, but she was talking about the rage that menopause and perimenopause introduces. And I really felt it. And it was funny because my partner was doing the visit with us and was walking around, and he's been front row seat, you know, front row and center to this past week of me just coming into this rage awareness. And so definitely hit home for the both of us. But it was more of me just having this aha moment of like, oh my God, I'm not alone in what I feel. And I want to process it for a bit because I don't want to live in this space. Like I want to acknowledge it. I want it to run its course however long it takes, because it may take years, right? But it's also awakening something else in me that I feel like I'm going to have to focus, you know, during Mercury Retrograde, when, you know, you kind of go underground for a bit and you plan for like the next steps ahead. I feel like this energy specifically is something that I need to harness. And so that said, I wanted to do a reading not for myself, since I just like verbal vomited my shit, but more so I wanted to do a reading for other people who may be going through something that they just feel is creeping up, whether it is health issues, status issues, or identity issues, or boundaries. You know, it's like that's the one thing is I feel like a lot of people are going to have their boundaries challenged multiple times in the next like week or two, and you're really gonna have to sit with it and deal with some core value systems and core narratives about yourself to identify, why don't I have boundaries around this, and how does this affect me or impact me, you know, globally, or as a person, or in my friend group, or in my family. And I feel like it's something that we're going to absolutely have to deal with, you know, and if we haven't dealt with it by the end of this summer, it's going to come right back in the next retrograde phase. You know, it's going to just be like, hey mama, or hey whoever you are, it's like, did you figure that out? Did you like tackle that? Did you let that person know that they need to like step back for a second and like respect who you are? Or did you, you know, reach out to your friends who are the same age group as you, like Krista, and talk to them about, are they going through perimenopause and what is it like? You know, it's like you gotta just like, you have to handle these things as they come along. And it's hard to make those first steps. And so that is what the reading is about, is how do you make the first steps around this energy. And it is truly around the intro to Leo season, authenticity, obnoxiousness, but authenticity, and then also the pre-retrograde shadow. So the current energy of how you tackle this is Yara, which is cycles, and is around feminine cycles. And I shit you not, this is the real thing. But this is all about realizing that everything comes in cycles, including retrograde themes, right? The one thing that this is it. So the one thing that Yara teaches us is that when we are in a cycle, it is to identify it, break it down, figure out the root cause, shadow work, right? Figure out the root cause of why this cycle is happening, and then learn from it, like go through it, like let yourself like flow down that stream until you hit the next lesson that you're supposed to learn. This is an opportunity. And I definitely hear that message for myself as well. Now the challenge is nowadays, which is constraint, not holding yourself back as you're learning this lesson and coming into your authentic self. And this is the other thing I was going to say. Leo season, the way to kind of harness that, speak openly about how you feel, about what you're going through. Find other people who are going through exactly what you are, and then be as vulnerable as you feel comfortable with being. But don't hold it in. Don't be the only person navigating this energy, right? Nowadays is about holding yourself back from that current energy. And then the outcome of that is initiation, Perthro. I love this. Actually, it's one of my favorite runes because Perthro is the energy of realizing that you have to do something about it, right? It's almost like that getting off your chair, getting up, you know, saying the tough thing, right? And Perthro is an opportunity to heal too. You know, initiation is, you know, that feeling, that emotion of stepping into your authenticity, but doing it because there's a bigger picture here and knowing that your words will create change, right? And so that is the lesson from this. And I'm just going to call this reading, it's like a Mercury retrograde shadow, right? Pre-shadow. And it's about identifying where you're at, how you're feeling. You know, Yara is cycle. So identify the cycle that you're in. Stand in that authenticity of the pain and the shadow moment around that. You know, you know, for me, it is about realizing, hey, I'm in this stage. I can't pretend I'm not in it anymore, or just be like, oh, look, you know, my period went from 6 days to a day and a half. It's like, I'm not in that space anymore. I think I'm in that space where I have to stand up and be like, who else is going through this? And I think I need help. Think I need a support system, right? And so that's what this energy is jumping into the stream and letting it sweep you downstream. Do not hold yourself back or get caught up on anything that would be a coping mechanism around this change in you. And then initiation. It's time to make a shift. It's time to step into your authenticity, and it's time to allow that cycle to change, to move you into the next season of where you're meant to be, myself included. So yeah, good luck. And I'm curious to see what anyone else is experiencing during this time, because it's pretty big life lessons, I'll be honest with you. It's like monumental life shifts is the theme of this pre-shadow and Mercury retrograde. So yeah, take care, and I look forward to hearing everyone else's experience around this.